On today's episode, we're going to talk about Blood Feast, 1941, Impressing Steven Spielberg, The Lumacrane, and of course, why you should never marry your lead actress. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds.
Hey everybody, Danny Brown here, creator of the Knuckle Puck, and we at Knuckle Puck Camera are proud supporters of this episode of The Op. The Knuckle Puck is a camera accessory loved by operators and camera assistants alike that allows the operator to pan and tilt with precision and ease. Check it out at knucklepuckcamera.com and make sure to follow us on Instagram at knucklepuckcamera.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy The Op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll. Rolling.
Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. We mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Op, the podcast where we talk about operators and the art of operating and the art of visual storytelling. Today, I am really excited to have someone who has been around in the industry, Andy Romanoff, with me. A couple of things about Andy before we get into it. Andy has been in the industry a long time, since the very beginnings on some level, which we'll talk about. Some of the things that he's worked on are To Live and Die in L.A., Stop Making Sense, Best Little Horror House in Texas, Friday the 13th Part 3, because Friday the 13th Part 2 apparently had questions that needed to be answered. Wolfen, One from the Heart, 1941, Blood Feast, which I'm very excited to talk to you about. And I could not do anything but end with this, Sweatin' to the Oldies 3, which apparently was better than 2 and 1. He is the 2009 recipient of the SOC Distinguished Service Award. He is an inventor, a father, a husband, a part of the counterculture movement of the 60s, and a friend. Andy, thank you very much for being here today.
Oh my God, who is this guy you're describing?
We should get him on the show.
You really, I think he's too old, but.
Well, there you go. I'm so excited to sit and talk with you. Thank you.
What a pleasure.
So, starting right from the beginning, but not from the beginning, because, I have to also back up once and say Andy has a great book that I will also plug at the end called, what is the name of it, Andy?
Stories I've been meaning to tell you.
And it is available through BookBaby. And
BookBaby, it's available as an ebook now on Amazon.
Ebook,
and a bunch of other.
By the time this comes out, it'll be everywhere. But it is about Andy's life, and so the reason I mention it is because I was going to say, how did you get here, and can you tell us about your career? But leave out the beginnings of it that are in the book, because then people have things to read about. So Andy used to steal cars and all sorts of stuff like that. Did I give too much away? As a kid.
All true?
Yeah. It's a great book. You should read it. So
Thank
tell
you.
us about your career.
Oh boy. So I started in 1967, I believe, on a nudie, because there were things called nudies at that moment, called Boing, Boinng.
A classy film, I'm assuming.
Yes, a very classy film, and it was of those moments. It was girls with beach balls in front of them, and guys.
Yeah.
And it was a made in Chicago film. A guy named Herschel Lewis.
Okay.
Another guy named Dave Friedman, who became the inventors of the gore film. But this was their last kind of gasp in the nudie business.
And what did you do on that film?
I was the PA, but I was already shooting stills. I was shooting both stills for myself and doing weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like that. And I was beyond excited to be on a movie set. And it was a tiny crew. It was probably 7 people or 8 people.
Okay. How old were you? Ballpark?
Maybe 18.
Okay.
So I took the camera over. And because there was no crew, and because Herschel, saw that I was interested, he gave me the camera. He just essentially, said, okay, here's how you'll thread the magazine,
That's fantastic.
right? And then after that, I was loading mags. Maybe I didn't understand I was supposed to clean them between loads, but I could thread film through an old Arri magazine and a Mitchell magazine. And
What do you remember? What camera it was?
oh, sure, it's a Mitchell NC,
Wow.
not even a BNC.
Wow.
They shot movies over and over again. These guys with an NC and a Barney,
Wow.
not a blimp. Yeah,
That's kind of amazing.
I mean, my first operating was on a Sidefinder NC.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
Well, so the NC is the unblimped version
Yes.
of a Mitchell camera.
Okay.
And the Sidefinder is that little box that you see sitting off on the
Oh,
side.
so it wasn't reflex through
Not
the
at
camera.
all
It was
reflex,
just
nor does
guessing.
it really frame unless there's a system that Mitchell made, because of course people kind of wanted to know where the camera was pointed, where you had a different cam for each
this
lens.
is the rack over system.
The rack over system, and so you could get your center line. You would look through the eyepiece in the racked over camera, and then you would put the crosshairs on something, and then you would turn a little knob and line the two up. But we didn't have that. What we had was just the little box on the side. So you could do that as long as the actors didn't move. You could still do the crosshair and tighten it up. But if they moved during the shot, or you were doing big pans or stuff like that, you were just totally guessing. And so this was the days of you would say, cut and freeze,
and then check,
and then you would rack over and look back and forth, and you'd say, yeah, it's mainly there.
That's great.
So that's how I started operating.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And so is this the same company that you did Blood Feast with?
No.
Oh.
No, yes. No, excuse me. It is. Yes, it is the one that I did Blood Feast with. It was Blood Feast was not in Chicago. It was down in Miami.
Okay. Because
Herschel and Dave understood how cold Chicago was in the winter. And so they always attempted to make a picture down in Miami.
Nice.
And I drove the truck. When I say the truck, it was a Volkswagen van. It was an entire movie company in a Volkswagen van. It was a Mitchell NC, an Arri 2C, 4 Master Lights. I don't know if you guys know. These guys will never know who Master Lights. Master Lights were over voltage, 110 volt lamps but with a transformer that racked them up to about 160 volts, so that they went from 2,700 degree Kelvin to 32 or 3,300 degrees, and then you could use them to shoot movies.
This seems safe.
Yeah, and no grip equipment, tripods, a friction head, and a fluid head. No gear head.
Oh boy!
No Apple boxes, no grip stands.
And you were driving the truck and the cinematographer.
I was driving the truck down with all of this equipment. The most important thing in that truck was the makeup kit with a couple of quarts of this very great looking blood that we were going to use to rip tongues out of people and cut their heads off and stuff.
Well, I was going to say, from your book, you mentioned what part of the movie history Blood Feast has. It was the first movie that did what?
It's the first gore film. It's the first film that on screen actually shows organs being ripped out. If you don't look too close,
yeah, sure,
yeah. And it had 4 of those scenes, because Herschel said if you have those 4 scenes, nobody's going to pay attention to anything else, and he operated on that principle.
Yeah.
And there I was. That was my 3rd picture.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I remember also from your book, you had a great explanation of how you knew when the set was lit.
Oh.
As the cinematographer.
Yes. Well, I wasn't cinematographer yet, although I was operating on some of that stuff.
Oh, you were the camera operator.
I was camera operator, camera assistant, electrician. I was a number of things.
Okay.
And yeah, so we took the 4-master lights and, we put them out on the beach and we ran out cords to them. And when you ran out of extension cords, and lamps, you were done. You were lit.
That's where it was lit. I love that. It's a pretty easy way to know, right?
It's totally easy. And
That's fantastic. So you you did Blood Feast, and then where'd you go from there?
oh gosh, I stayed in Miami. I did a couple of other pictures. I shot my first picture right about then. A black and white movie. I don't remember the name of it. I could probably look it up.
For them or for someone else?
No, for somebody else. That was an interesting story.
Yeah.
So they hired me to shoot a picture. I'd never shot a picture, but I had been operating.
Yeah.
And maybe I had done some little tiny, I don't know, industrial films or something like that by then.
Well, and
but
you
I
knew
was
how to
certainly
light because once you got to the end of the extension cables, it
well.
was
This
lit.
one was in a studio.
Oh wow.
This one was in a studio up in Hallandale, Florida, and first day I came on set, and it used as the crew was some experienced Miami electricians,
hmm
and there maybe even was a grip, And the first day I walked on the set, and the set was a kind of a big set.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, let's go. Turn on the lights. And the sons of bitches had put every light up on the rail on, and they flipped the switch, and all the lights were on. And it was just the most confusing mess
Oh wow.
I had ever seen.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, what am I
What do
going
I
to
do
do
now?
here? And so I just started and I just said, turn that one off. Okay, now turn that one off. And I just
With
started,
conviction.
I just started pointing my way around
Yeah.
and turning off lights and seeing what was happening. And then I probably had to go back and turn one or two back on.
Yep.
Because of course, this is, ISO, ASA then,
Yeah.
it was a black and white film. It might have been 200.
Yeah.
But it might have not. And so it was a ton of light. It's all incandescent light. It's a ton of light.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just, it was the most frightening day. I still remember that fear
Yeah.
but I got their respect. And after that, that was the last time they fucked with me.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think that's like a larger story.
Sure.
That one of the things, if you're a young operator, and particularly if you're a young, inexperienced operator, and you find yourself among strangers, they may test you.
Oh, may? You think?
And I know.
And if you're a younger operator, by the way, or if you're a woman.
of course,
right?
of course, all that stuff. Yeah, is that you just have to know that that's likely to happen to you, and that you got to be prepared for it, or react quickly.
Yeah, and if you're not ready, you fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which
and
is what
and
you
it's
were
very
doing.
much that you won't be ready. You can't know. You haven't done it yet.
Yeah, that's exactly
So
right.
you just take a breath.
Yeah.
And take it easy, and you don't have to be quick to answer.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
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 So-
Well, no, but that's interesting because if you're not, then it almost seems like you've got a lot going on inside that you're thinking about, and people, oh, well, he's really thinking this over.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's just a vast canyon with some tumbleweed blowing by.
totally the case. And if you get panicked, they'll fuck with you.
Yeah.
Humans are like that. I wish they weren't.
Yeah.
But humans are like that. They
Smell fear.
They smell fear, and you can't not have the fear, but you certainly can know that you're going to have the fear and rehearse for yourself. What am I going to do? Because they're going to come at you from a way you cannot imagine.
There's no question about that. That's an incredible piece of advice, actually. So you made it through that movie, and do
I
you
did.
remember being happy with it when it was done?
I'll tell you a funny thing. Later on, I will show you Sinex strips that I have from that movie.
What are Sinex? I don't know what
This is
that-
wonderful.
No. Yeah, what is
so
it?
you are I hate to say this, Dave,
I've been
but
around for a little bit.
You've been around for a while, and you don't even
No,
know.
what is it?
Sinex strips are how we used to judge exposures. They were a series of of strips, little pieces of film, 8 inches long.
On set, you're saying?
No.
Oh, after the fact.
This is the next day you would get a set of Sinex strips from the lab, and they were at every printer light.
Oh, okay. No, so I think I know what you're talking about. We used to call them the maybe it was the printer lighting report or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe we just called it differently, and it sort of gave you an idea of where you could look at it and go, okay, there is an image.
there is an image, and so you would get one for this is for people who didn't print dailies or that it would be every scene, every slated take.
Yeah.
You would get a strip of film about 8 inches long. So. And each frame on that 8 inches was printed at a different printer light, and the number was.
I think I remember. I think we called them lighting printer lights or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But I do want to see them because I haven't seen one.
They're Sinex, Cinex strips because they're printed in a Sinex machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
I learned something.
Yeah.
So what was the next step? Where'd you go from there?
Pictures.
Yeah.
I for the longest time, I wanted to be in Hollywood. I was working in Chicago. I was working in Miami. Once in a while, I'd get to New York. And I was doing industrials and commercials and kind of making a living, not a decent living. I was non-union. So there was all of that, everything that implied.
Sure.
And I was completely self-taught. I didn't, for a long time at least, I didn't work with anybody who knew more than I did. And then I was fortunate enough to meet Mario DeLeo, who's a cinematographer and a director. Mario's still around. He's in his 90s now. And I was lucky enough to be Mario's assistant on a religious film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In Michigan, we met. And he was an Italian from Italy with a wonderful accent, that I think he very deliberately kept.
Because it set them apart.
Come on, boys, come on, let's go. Come on, let's go.
That's great.
And Mario had been trained in the Italian film industry by great Italian cinematographers like Bogani and people like that. And he was a very experienced crane operator, which then later, suddenly had meaning to me.
Sure.
And I was his assistant, and he put up with shit from me because I was a young fool.
Yeah.
And he protected me and yelled at me and railed at me and we forged a friendship that has endured for 60 years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. How long did he shoot for? When did he?
Mario was, I think he sort of quit shooting around the time of Miami Vice because he started shooting Miami Vice and then he directed it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so he moved on to directing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh,
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And so this is another one of those things, like we all know the names of the ASC greats.
Yes.
This is another wonderful cinematographer who, because he was not an ASC member, that was his choice.
Yeah.
Did a ton of television and movies and everything, and was a wonderful cinematographer and a wonderful teacher, and a guy who should be better known.
Yeah. There's a ton of those people out there.
Yeah.
Someone asked me a ways back, and I don't remember what it was for, but they said, "Who are the Steadicam operators that you admire the most?" So I threw out the usual names and whatever. I said, but you know what, to be perfectly honest, it's someone that I've never met who right as we're speaking is doing take 22 of probably 25 takes and is really upset that the lead actress keeps taking the far corner too wide. But when they call roll cameras, angrily picks the Steadicam up, walks over and says, "We're ready to go," and then nails the 20-second take. But it's the truth. There are all those people out there who are great, who just never do a project that they're just doing solid, good work all the time.
You don't get visibility.
Yeah.
Nobody knows you're there.
No, it's exactly right. And the thing that I've always found is, and the visibility is, you stumble onto a project that for whatever reason happens to blow up. It may be in spite of you even, but may not even be because of you. And you just ride the coattails.
Yes,
not in a
absolutely.
bad way, but you get swept up in it.
That's life.
That's life. That's the film industry, right? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and maybe even more than the film industry.
That's a good point.
I think we know some politicians that
we might.
We're
not getting into that.
Seem to have been, a lot of fortuitous circumstance.
Yes, and use them to their benefit. So how'd you make it out to California? And when did you make it out to California?
I guess I came out here in the early 70s, maybe. I can't tell you precisely because I came and went a number of times. Mario DeLeo was shooting a picture. Oh, Lord. I'll probably have to, get you the name later or something. And, but it was over at the old Allied Artists Studios.
Well, where was that? Yeah. Where was that?
I'm beginning to realize I'm going to tell you a lot of stuff that,
I love it though. It's great.
No, it's exactly. But, Allied Artists is nowadays KCRW.
Okay. Which is like Santa Monica City College.
No. This is.
No, I know where you're talking about down in whatever.
This
that
is
part
where
of the city
where
is.
Sunset bends around towards downtown.
Okay. Yeah.
Right over there is a a nice complex, which was the old Allied Artists Studios, and I have somewhere upstairs. I have an Allied Artists employees pass.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah.
Oh, I got to get a picture of that. That's great.
Yeah. And so Mario was shooting this picture, and it was union. And I wasn't union, so he couldn't get me on as his assistant. But he got me on as a PA.
Okay.
And I have pictures from those days of standing, on a Hollywood set, in a Hollywood stage.
That's so cool.
Oh, my God. I was probably 23, 24, whatever, something like that.
That must have been huge.
Maybe even younger, because I think about it now, actually, whatever. Yeah, even younger than that.
Were camera people wearing coats and ties back then? No. This is the 60s. Okay.
So no, this is
okay. And so then where'd you go from there? How'd you? I know there's a lot that we're glossing over in a big way.
Well, so I think we have to address the fact that I didn't have a conventional career at all.
No, you didn't.
I would leave and go and, ride motorcycles. And then I would come back and I'd work on a couple of pictures. And then I'd left and, then I got married on a picture and I married a lead actress. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just be careful. That's all.
Is this the one in England?
This is the one where we ended up in England.
You ended up in England.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. No,
so you're saying don't marry the lead actress on a movie.
I said you got to be careful.
Okay. All right. Think about it.
It certainly didn't work for me.
Okay. All right. And that's the end of that story.
No, I'm not talking about it.
No, that's great. One of the things that we are, by the way, for people listening who haven't read Andy's book, which you really should read Andy's book, are glossing over is the amount of time that he spent on the hog farm, which was just with these counterculture folks from the 60s and Ken Kesey and all this unbelievable story, which I don't mean to gloss over, but is probably not for this podcast.
That's that's not what
that would be
here.
a 6-hour podcast right there. But the stories are fascinating.
So I went down to Miami to work on a picture. I can look at my notes and I can tell you. I forget the name of it. But for Herschel, and the first day there, I walk in the production office and there is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out she's the lead and her name is Elizabeth Wilkinson. And so we immediately fell into bed and, and I got into a certain amount of trouble because Herschel hated taking a moment to light. His idea of lighting was he'd put 3 actors up in a straight line in front of the camera.
Uh-huh.
you know, and then he would put 3 or 4 lights behind the camera
Yep.
and bang them on the actors.
mhm.
And that was the lighting. And, you know,
Yeah.
he had enough sense to take them away from the wall. So there might be a little fall
Yeah,
off,
okay.
but
But that
that's
was
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And, you know, and by the way, a Herschel Lewis trick was, you know, he would do a scene in the wide, 3 shot, let's say. He'd do a scene in the wide. And as long as all the actors got through their lines without stumbling, he'd say, that's it, we're moving on. So actors who worked for him more than once understood that the only way you could get another shot was to blow the line.
Is to blow the line. Oh, that's great.
So if you blew the line, you know, then they'd move to a 2 shot.
Yeah.
And then if you blew the line again, you could get a close-up.
You get a close-up. That's fantastic. So basically, another point for anyone out there: adapt to get what you need. That's great. Yeah. That's great. So basically, did you then start spending some time lighting this woman? Is that why he was?
Of course I did. Yeah. And oh God,
that didn't go over well.
No, Herschel was just Andy. You know, I say, Herschel, for God's sakes, give me a minute, you know.
There's a lot at stake here.
there is.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Wow. So and you ended up going to England with her, but that didn't.
So after that picture, she left. I worked on a little Veronica Lake. Believe it or not, I worked on probably the last movie Veronica Lake
ever made. Veronica Lake?
Oh, Jesus.
Come on.
Who am I dealing with here? It's children.
Why am I even here?
Veronica Lake is a huge movie star of the 40s
I don't
and
remember
50s.
that name. Okay.
Oh, look her up. She was wonderful.
Yeah.
She was just wonderful. I'm just trying to think. She did a Preston Sturges. Just look up Preston Sturges, Veronica Lake.
Okay, good.
Yeah, wonderful. Right. But by that time, she had a drinking problem, and her career was gone, and she was in a movie called Flesh Feast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, you're working on all the high quality projects here.
Oh yeah.
All right.
So I'm working on Flesh Feast, but I'm in lust. Yeah. I cannot bear to be without this woman.
Yeah.
And I was a camera operator named Dick Pierce, later a cinematographer up in Canada. And we were, I don't know who was A and who was B, but we were basically 2 camera, sitting sort of next to each other on dollies. And I would say, I gotta go, Dick. I can't live without her. And Andy, shut up. You know, I finally left. I quit the picture and I flew up to Chicago and rang her bell at 6:30 in the morning and said, we have to get married. And she was smarter than me. This, by the way, I'm 23, she's 25. And I was her 3rd marriage.
Oh.
So, yeah, and she had a child back somewhere. She was smarter than me.
Yeah.
She said, no, we don't have to do this. I said, we do have to do this. And I was very persuasive.
Apparently, yeah. So
we got married. And then I started the film department at WTTW. This is what I mean about this career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's WTTW?
WTTW is the PBS station in Chicago. In those days, it was something called a PBL station in Chicago. I started their film department.
When you say you started their film department, because they were making in-house movies and they were just one-offing them and they wanted to have sort of more control over the equipment? Or?
I think that's exactly right. I don't know what happened before I got there.
Okay.
But I know that they had decided they wanted a full-time in-house department. And so I went and interviewed for the job. And by their standards, again, this is Chicago. This is 1968.
Yeah.
I just realized, I think I gave you bad information at the beginning. Yeah, sure. My first job was in 1960.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because by 68, I'm already
you're this
deeply
old timer.
experienced.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, you could go into the interview, and you're probably one of the few people who was like, "Yeah, I've been on sets, and I know this.
I know how to light.
Yeah.
Here. I couldn't say here's my reel.
No, but you knew enough to say you put the 3 actors up against the wall, you turn 3 lights on, you do 1 take, and you move on. And they were like, "That's great. Yes. That's fantastic." So you ran. So how long did you run the film department there?
Not quite a year.
Wow.
I started it. I used my first ever Eclair NPR.
Oh, yeah.
I got a brand new NPR with I'm sure a 10-to-1 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I put that camera on my shoulder and peeked through it at eyepiece. Because the other reflex camera I had used at that point was an Arri 2C, not a a 2B,
2B.
not a 2B,
Yeah, okay.
which had an unbelievably bad viewfinder.
Yeah, you could barely see anything through it. I touched one of those once a long time ago. I can't remember for what.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the Eclair NPR, actually, I remember using that quite a bit. I'm sure the ones
viewfinder moved up and down.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, a person could nestle their head against the magazine.
That's exactly right.
Put their eye in there.
It sort of had some ergonomics to it. And
I
it was yeah.
I was
great.
living
So
large.
were you shooting stuff for them, or were you just? Oh, okay. And like news.
I did some news. I did documentary.
Okay.
I did again. This was PBL days, not PBS. I did kind of big docs for them, though they're big docs.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and interstitials and just whatever.
Yeah. That's very cool. So I want to jump forward, because now I'm realizing, after having read your book and listening to this, it does go all over the place.
It does.
But the thing that I want to jump to is the Lumacrane.
Oh, that.
That, yes.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you find out about that? And what is it? Some people may not know what it is.
So by 1977, 78, I had made up my mind I wanted to direct. And so with a friend, a guy named Bobby V, who owned a company called Film Trucks.
Film Trucks. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, finally I'm getting it.
No, Film Trucks I remember. I don't think I ever saw one, actually, but they were these, it was like a mobile film studio,
They were
right?
invented by a guy named Fuad Saeed, who was a cinematographer on, a series. Somebody here is saying right now, it's so-and-so, you idiot. Anyway, Fuad Saeed invented the...
and just for anybody who doesn't know, to explain what it was.
Okay, invented an all-in-one production studio.
Yeah.
First in buses. He took buses, he put an aircraft generator, connected it to the diesel engine, and then he built storage compartments all around the sides of the buses.
Wow.
And filled those storage compartments with the smallest lights you could then get, still incandescent.
Yeah.
And production equipment and tiny little dollies. I mean, everything was kind of custom made, except I think they were shooting with BNCs.
Okay.
And then up in the bus, there was a makeup department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And seating for crew. It was a double-decker.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Seating for crew.
So you could actually transport people in it as well. And
oh, yeah. That was the idea.
That's amazing.
He started, by the way, with something even smaller. He started first with little vans that had everything packed inside the van, but then it had a little hydraulic platform that went up so he could get up 20 feet in the air and shoot from it. Oh, I mean, for the time, it was a genius approach to getting out of the studio without taking many, many trucks. Because this is before everybody went on location. Location was a long, slow process.
Yeah. So this was a big deal. This was a game changer.
So then it became these buses.
Yeah.
And then he built a bunch of those, and then sold it to Taft Broadcasting, I think, some Midwest news organization who ran it into the ground, and Bobby bought it.
Jeez.
and changed its name to Film Trucks. He already had a small rental company.
Okay.
And so Bobby was going to produce this picture, and I was going to direct it. And I came to New York. And, we had writers, and we flew Don Johnson to New York. Is that a name?
Yeah, that's a name, but he wasn't Don Johnson yet, probably, right?
He was Don Johnson. No, he wasn't that Don.
That's what I mean.
He was a boy and his dog, Don Johnson, not
gotcha.
the later Don Johnson. But he was. I knew instantly he was a star. Yeah. And we flew to New York and met with him, and he agreed to do the picture, and he pushed me hard to use his 17-year-old girlfriend, and I said, no, she's too young, this Melanie Griffith.
Who, by the way, I just got through talking about Alan Queso about Roar. He worked on Roar, which Melanie Griffith was. So her name just came up, but that's amazing. And so you basically, you nixed
I said, I want you, but her, I don't know. We'll figure something.
We don't want someone who's not an actress in here. Yeah, okay.
But then I had a motorcycle accident. I broke my jaw and I broke my arm, and the financing on the picture collapsed.
Oh, boy.
And a friend of mine said, we're doing a festival in the south of France, and we got one extra seat on the airplane.
A music festival.
Yeah, jazz festival.
Yeah.
And if you want to get on a plane, and I had nothing. I don't know if I had $100, and I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do with my life. I really was kind of bottomed out.
Yeah.
And I said, sure. So I got on a plane and I went to France. I went to the south of France to a racetrack there. They had a stage set up and, music and all the rest of that. And I walked down towards the stage and I see this thing, and it is the first remote crane.
Wow.
It is the moment of the birth of the remote crane, and it's a crane called the Luma.
And it had a remote crane, meaning it had a completely remote head on it, as opposed to an operator riding on it.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And you have to understand, I had done a little bit of crane operating by that point, and so I knew, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. First of all, because the first thing I ever saw it do was swing out from a position out in the middle of the audience, up over the stage, and then the camera pointed straight down, and then it rotated around the drum riser and then floated back up.
Wow.
You couldn't do that shot. That shot had never been done before, except by some hugely expensive one-off thing that somebody had invented to do a shot and then buried.
That must have been mind-blowing to see.
Yeah, and it was tiny. The head was just barely the size of the camera.
Yeah.
And the arm was this skinny little thing, and suddenly you could fly. The camera could swing anywhere very quickly. You weren't trying to stop 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pounds of mass.
Yeah. Now, this was 77?
76. One of the few dates I have clearly in my mind, because thank God the festival was called Riviera 76.
There you go. So my question is, was there video assist?
Yes. Yeah, and that's what these two guys, Jean-Marie Lavalou and an Alain Masseron, and then a third guy, David Samuelson from Samuelson Film Services. Okay. Jean-Marie and Alain had invented the concept of the Luma when they were serving in the French
Navy or something like that, right? Didn't they do some crazy shot in a boat? Or
they
on
do
a
shot.
Submarine or something?
You guys.
Yeah.
This is a shot to think about. The first shot that the Luma ever did.
Yeah.
The Luma in those days was a series of pipes.
Okay.
And then there was a pivot point and then some weights.
Yeah.
At the back end of the pivot point. And then at the front of it was a manually operated pan and tilt head. No video assist.
Oh, so you would actually walk with it.
No follow focus.
To pan and tilt, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be nice if you could walk with it, but the first shot they ever did with it, and the reason they invented it was to do a shot that went over the table as a bunch of sailors ate their dinner in a submarine.
Wow.
That's why they had to invent it. There was no way you could do.
They just literally took out some paper and pens and
they made this thing out of parts, submarine pieces.
So great.
And the way that they operated it was the first operator walked. First, you see the whole table and you see the guys on either side.
Yeah.
And he walks and he I guess puts his knee up on the table somehow or other. I don't know.
Yeah.
Manages to get on the table and starts to knee walk his way down
to continue operating the shot.
Continue operating the shot. And at a certain point, he can't do it anymore. And a second operator takes over and pushes on. And everywhere in their wake are kicked over.
Yeah, it's just pushing things out of the way or whatever. Yeah.
Drink.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's so
That's
great.
the first sort of remote crane.
Yeah.
And they know at that point that they have to, the minute they do it, they know that they have to make more of this. And so they go to, Samuelson had an office in Paris. They go to the office in Paris and they convince them to back a polished version of this. And the polished version, the first version of that, still has a manually operated head.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But then they know they have to do electronics, and David Samuelson gets involved, and they build a thing. And here's what they know.
Yeah.
And here's how important it is. Number one, the first ever remote head has hand wheels to operate.
Okay.
It isn't joysticks or any
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
You say sure, but many of the ones that came after didn't know that
Oh,
because
is
they
that
were
right?
invented by
Ah.
electronics people, not camera people.
Okay. All
So
right.
they know that they have to
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
the operator something they're familiar with.
Yes. Yes.
So and the second thing is that they know, of course, they have to see through it. And fortunately, this is a moment when
Video
black
assist, you're
and
talking-
white,
Yeah.
stuttering, impossible video
Yeah.
assists are starting to be made. So they have that.
And back then, was it basically let's just get a video camera and jam it up to the eyepiece so it becomes the eye almost? Or
No. Because they were working now with a camera rental company,
They figured out
those
a way
guys
to-
knew. So I think the first one they did was they hacked oh, Jesus. I know on the Panaflex what they did was they hacked the side door. They got a Panaflex X body.
Okay. Yep.
And they hacked the viewfinder off
And just
put a
split some
camera.
of the light off to the side or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there was no split. I mean, it was the mirror 100% because the
because you
video
didn't need the
assist
eyepiece,
was
sure.
so lacking in sensitivity.
Yes, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah, and if you wanted to see something, if you remember the Panaflex X, it had a door. You'd swing the door out 90 degrees, and then it was on hinge pins.
you take it
You'd
out.
pull it off,
Yep.
and so they had two doors with them.
That's right. There was that other door that went on that just had the camera where the eyepiece like slot was sort of.
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Now, but the other thing that was big about this was that instead of having a parallelogram like old ones, they had
Right.
like a worm.
They had a worm gear
or something like
inside.
that.
It was a solution that sort of worked.
Okay.
I mean, for every day you ever saw a Luma crane go up and down seamlessly, know that some Luma technician had spent hours dealing with that fucking worm
up
gear.
to the minute that they were doing the shot.
Dealing with
Okay,
the worm
gotcha.
gear. Because anytime you change directions, of course, you had a little moment of freedom there.
Okay.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Gotcha.
But you made it work.
So was this one that you saw at the festival the first Luma crane?
It is the first actual Luma crane.
And was that the first time they'd used it, or they'd used it before then? And
They had already done one or two shots. In fact, they had already done. They had been the opening of a picture, a Polanski picture.
That's right.
A Tenant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing shot.
Uh-huh.
If you guys ever, want to look at
The opening shot for that movie?
opening shot
Okay.
for the Tenant, which floats you into different windows in a building,
Yeah.
and that's never been done before.
Yeah.
So people understood immediately, the visionary ones.
Yeah. Because
What this-
prior to that, you would have had to have an operator and an assistant on the base of the camera. And that was the only way. So if it wasn't big enough to get through or whatever, you couldn't do that.
And you were limited in so many other ways. First of all, could you have gotten a crane big enough to get up to the third floor
Because it's so much heavier.
into that place?
yeah.
Yeah, you would have been 10 tons
Oh,
of crane.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean the context of invention. One of the things that I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
You in order to really understand what a thing is and how important it is, you have to know what the world is struggling with at that moment.
Sure.
And so that's this moment of invention. For
Well,
the
it's
Luma.
interesting because I never thought about it before, but I think of like when Garrett stepped off of the crane in Bound for Glory,
Bound for Glory, sure.
with Steadicam the first time they used it, how that changed everything. But this did as well. It probably doesn't get as much. Maybe because there's so many other cranes that came after it, it's been lost a little bit, but it must have been groundbreaking at the time. That's unbelievable.
It was completely groundbreaking, and had the economics worked a little differently, you would know a lot more. The two things that happened were one that they didn't choose to patent it. And there were many ways it could have been patented. So then it became very easy for others to copy.
So that's why there are so many different cranes that sort of came around quickly after
and the
that.
second one was economics. And Samuelson's chose not, and I'm not saying they chose for frivolous reasons. Maybe they just didn't have the financing to do it. They chose not to make 50 of them. And if they had
So
made...
there was a demand for other people to make them.
Yeah, so only 7 were ever made.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I had 2 in L.A.
Wow.
when I had them.
Yeah.
And there was one in Australia and one in London and 2 in Paris and 1 in New York. And that was it.
And so you came back to the U.S. and through a series of things, you basically brought it here, yeah?
I met the Frenchman at that moment.
Yeah.
and my jaw's wired shut. I,
Oh,
I,
didn't think
I
about
have hair down, back to my ass, and and my arm is in a cast, and I probably haven't been asleep in a couple of days,
Yeah.
and we know how that happens. I want to bring this thing to America. But yes, long story. Bobby V. I
Yeah.
went back. I told Bobby a year later. I'm working second unit. I'm shooting second unit for Willy Courant, who's a great cinematographer of the French New Wave,
Okay.
on a little movie called, or TV movie, I think it was, called. You'll remove this embarrassing silence.
I like this part. I can't remember most of the things I worked on. You've got even more time going.
Return to Jackson County.
There you go.
And I don't know Willie,
Yeah. But the thing that I like is you've just struggled to remember a movie that nobody knows, but you've remembered it, so it's great.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How many projects will you work on in your lifetime that people will remember? I mean, it's just as a way of thinking about the relative importance of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say
No question.
it isn't an important thing. Our lives are important.
Yeah, but in others, and even more so, it's the reason I sort of made that joke is you're talking about a TV movie.
Right.
It came, it showed, maybe it showed twice,
Yeah.
and it's gone.
Yeah.
Now, of course, everything's viewable everywhere, and this and then the other. So it does change things. But at the same point, I'm working on stuff that's streaming, right? Sure, it may be out there forever, but it's out there in the middle of 12 million other things. So is it really even, does it make a difference? The only thing is that if I can remember the name someday, I can pull it up somehow.
Well, these are the stories of our lives.
Yeah.
And they're better, I believe, than the stories of the lives of people who spend their lives in office buildings. Certainly, I could never have done
I couldn't
that.
either. I could not in a second.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So
actually, just to put it in context, it just occurred to me. So you came back and talked to Bobby V about this thing,
right?
But since it's the 1970s, you couldn't show him what it had done.
No.
There were no shots that existed that you could really show him. You just basically, maybe you had a picture of it that you took or something like that, or did you even have that?
No.
So you're on a piece of paper drawing it going, and it does this.
I'm just waving my arms.
Or one arm because it's in a cast.
That's right.
And he obviously saw how important this was, or how the possibility of this.
Yeah. So, a year after coming back, I'm now back in LA.
Yeah.
And I've been hired to work on Return to Jackson County, and that picture's shooting somewhere in the wilds of Arizona. And so I go out there and I meet up with the crew, the director, and all the rest of it. And the first day going out to set, I'm making conversation with Willie, and I don't know him, and we've had one. You do know what it's like. You're the second unit DP, but you've never met the director. I did know the director, but you've never met the DP.
The first unit DP.
The first unit DP, and you're trying to find out how the fuck is he going to shoot this? Because I'd like to do what I can, So Willie, I'm making conversation. I say, Willie, I was in Paris a year or two ago, and I saw this amazing thing, and I described the Luma to him. He says, I don't remember the name of it at this point.
Yeah.
He says, oh, you mean the Luma crane? And I said, yeah, that's it, the Luma crane. He said, you don't happen to remember the names of the guys? I know nothing at this point except that memory. He says, oh, yes, this is Jean-Marie Lavalou and Alain Masseron. I said, fuck me. Willie, you have any idea how to get in touch with those guys? And he says, well, yes, I have the phone numbers here in my...
Oh, my gosh.
And he takes a paper phone book, out of his pocket. He flips through the pages, and he gives me the number of Samuelson. He doesn't have their personal phone number. He'll give me the number of Samuelson. Yes.
Yeah.
No, here's where it gets amazing. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to call Bobby. I'm going to tell him. So there was another guy, a guy named Ray Perrette, who told me he was going to bring the Luma to America. And because he had been one of the producers on the festival, I believed him.
So you just figured, okay, I missed that.
Yeah, we don't have a shot at that.
Yeah.
But a year later, it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And so, I'm thinking, oh, maybe there's a shot.
Yeah.
And so I figure I'll call Bobby V and tell him, why don't we I know how to reach these guys.
Sure. Yeah.
I get back to the motel, and another time warp thing here. There's, of course, no cell phones, but back at your motel in those days, they had a long, framework with little slots, and each slot had a room number on it.
Yeah.
And in each room number, there was, like, if people called, they would write on a little piece of paper, and put it
Yeah.
in your,
Okay.
in your
Yep. So
room
you'd come
slot.
back and look and
I'd
see
come
if there's
back.
a note
I
for
said, are there any messages for 206 or
Yeah.
whatever? And they, oh yeah, here you go. And I read it. It says, call Bobby V. Swear to God, call Bobby V.
Meaning you hadn't called him yet.
I
He
had
just
not
called
called
you out
him.
of the blue.
I'm coming back from that meeting and a day of scouting and whatever.
That's some weird cosmic something or other there. Yeah.
And I call Bobby, and the first thing he says to me is, you remember that thing you told me about? I want to go after that. How do we do that?
That's amazing.
I swear to you that my life was, from the moment I saw the Luma crane, I'm not telling you every day I knew what I was doing, but
Yeah.
I knew I had a charmed life, and I knew that this thing was hugely important to me.
Yeah.
And I never doubted that.
That's amazing.
So we finished shooting a movie. I flew to New York. Bobby and I and a lawyer flew to London because the Samuelson main office was in London.
Okay.
We negotiated with those guys.
Uh-huh.
They gave us, no, I take it back. That was later. That's contract. We flew to Paris.
Okay.
We met with the French guys.
Yeah.
We made a deal with them, and the deal was that they gave us marketing rights for the Luma for 90 days.
Okay.
And that's all they gave us.
All right.
But they also gave us a 3/4 inch, U-matic cassette
Of what it could do.
of
what it had done.
a shot that was absolutely, even to this day, people, I guess maybe not to this day. Now that David Mullins had a chance with Ms. Maybe Space, I'll say, oh yeah, I know how to do that shot.
Yeah.
But in this, you have to know.
What was the shot?
Oh my God, the shot starts in I think it was like a 3rd floor apartment, and there's a woman in there, and it does something, and it comes out, and it goes in through the window.
So it's coming in and out of windows on the
Yeah,
apartments
and it
on
goes
different floors
and
or
it
something?
ends up down a couple of floors lower and takes you out, and you see the building.
Yeah.
And ends up on the 3rd one, and there's a guy with a cast on his leg, and he pulls up his pants from the cast, and there with a ballpoint pen it says Luma.
That's great. Oh, so they did this just for marketing reasons.
Yes.
Oh, that's
exactly.
great. How great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. So wait, you said 90 days of marketing, meaning to sell?
For 90 days, they gave us, they never sold these cranes, and that was another choice that they made.
Okay.
And I understand it.
Yeah.
They were so expensive to build.
Yeah, but-
Each one was a
But
hand-built
you had
thing.
90 days to basically establish something,
To-
in which
if
case
we could make something happen with
Yeah.
that crane in 90
then
days,
they would sign a contract.
they would sign a contract,
Gotcha.
and we would get, it was a 60-40 split, and
Yeah.
we'd get 40% and
Okay.
blah, blah, blah. So I came back with this video,
Mm-hmm.
and a friend of mine wrote some copy and did a recording of, a thing saying, imagine a device that you could blah, blah,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. And then all I remember for sure is the end of it says, and then when it's all over, one man will take it apart and pack it up in a station wagon
Oh, wow.
and drive it to us. It's completely bullshit.
Yeah.
But we hadn't tried to pack it in anything
Sure.
yet, so we didn't know.
Yeah. You can't say it can't be done. And this is 78, 79?
Yeah, this is 78. Yeah.
Okay.
So now I got to figure out
What do you do with
how
it?
to, and I am nobody in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Oh God, am I nobody in
Yeah.
Hollywood?
Okay.
But I have friends, and one of them is Steve Poster. And Steve Poster, at this point in his career, has just shot second unit on Close Encounters.
Uh-huh.
But mainly he's, I think, doing commercials. And I don't even know that he shot Close Encounters, second unit on Close Encounters. I just know Stevie's my
He's shot
friend
stuff and you know him. Yeah.
who's actually in the system.
Yeah, he's
He's a union
cinematographer.
man and all that. And so Stevie's working with a director named Fred Stenger. Oh, shit, no. I go to see Fred Stenger,
Okay.
who's a commercial director
Yeah.
and a great partier. And mainly, I know, Fred, I've worked for him a couple of times, but mainly we have bonded over Friday nights.
So he's a great partier who also happens to be a director.
That is the truth.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Oh, I loved Freddie. So I go to see Freddie, who's cutting a commercial that he shot.
Okay.
And Stevie's there.
Okay. And you're basically going to see anybody you can just to go, how do I get this out here? What do I do with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I bring the cassette in and, I got something I got to show you, Freddie. You're going to love this thing and check this out. And so we go over and find a 3/4 inch, deck and I'm sure some modified TV and throw the cassette in and I show it to him. Freddie says, I don't know what to do with that, Andy. I don't have any idea.
Wow.
And Stevie says, I know exactly what to do with it.
Yeah.
He said, I just finished working for Steven Spielberg
Yeah.
on a picture called Close Encounters.
Yep.
He said he's starting a movie called 1941.
And Steven Spielberg wasn't really Steven Spielberg.
Oh, no,
quite
no.
yet.
He's done, well, it's true. He's on the Hollywood bubble, but he's not a huge,
household
not a-
name yet.
not a
Yeah,
household name,
'cause
exactly
Close
right.
Encounters hadn't come out yet.
Yes,
obviously.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's going to do a picture called 1941. He said, if he sees this thing,
Yeah.
Stephen was so prescient. He said, if he sees this thing, he'll take it. And if he takes it for a week, he'll never let it go.
There you go. Okay.
And so I said, yeah, how do I get it to him? He says, give me the cassette.
Oh, wow.
It's the only copy I have.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's right. You can't easily make copies of anything. Yeah. Okay. So
I give it to Stephen, and then I don't hear anything for a week or 10 days. And oh, shit. How are we going to get another
this
copy?
is the 1978 version of emailing your reel. You give the one copy to Stephen Poster and he gives it
Exactly.
to someone else.
And then all of a sudden, phone lines start buzzing back and forth because Spielberg has finally watched the cassette.
Yeah.
So Spielberg is leaving for Deauville, and he doesn't really have time to go to Paris. But the French guys put the Luma in a truck and drive to Deauville.
Did one person put it in the truck?
I think probably two of them,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And they drive it out to him?
They drive to Deauville.
Wow.
And they set it up in the courtyard
Get out of
at
here.
his hotel.
That's amazing.
And then they call up to his room and they say,
so he doesn't know.
He does not know.
Ah,
And they call up and they say, Mr. Spielberg, please come to your window and look down.
this is so good.
And Spielberg takes one look and comes downstairs
Yeah.
and plays with the wheels, and they fly him around a little bit, And he says,
Again, which must have been mind blowing.
oh,
And
if
with
you're
someone like that, he must have been thinking in his mind,
the instant
I know
he
what I
saw
can
it-
do with this because, he just has, he understands.
Yes,
Yeah.
he understands.
He understands camera movement.
So Spielberg says, I'm bringing this thing to America. Only he makes that actually happen.
There you go. All right. That's okay.
And so we brought it in for either a week or 2 weeks at the beginning of
Just
1941.
one of them. You had one crane.
There's only one crane.
Oh, the crane you
The
brought
crane.
in. Oh, okay. Okay. They hadn't built any more yet.
The
I got
crane with two French guys
Yeah.
and me.
you. Okay. And they shot it out here in California mostly.
Yes,
or
yeah.
all?
So we start at MGM in the
Uh-huh.
tank, and Spielberg he knows right away, and he starts to invent from day one, and he creates the language
Wow.
of the portable, small, lightweight crane. He sails through things, he skewers things, he makes the camera move faster and stay with actors. I want to tell you, this is not a great movie, but watch 1941 and don't watch it with your 2023 eyeballs.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
Try
fair enough.
hard to know where you are in
Yeah.
1978 and see what he's doing with the camera.
Yeah, actually, now I will. To be just full disclosure, I actually think 1941 is a great movie. I love that movie, especially
Okay.
when Toshiro Mifune is trying to get the big radio into the submarine, and he says,
have
"We
to
have
make
to
this
make this smaller." But I love that movie. But anyway, it's a good point because, of course, I've never done that. But so basically, he sort of looked at you guys. Well, you were new to it, but these two guys, and without saying it, said, "This is great. I'll take it from here, and this is actually what you do with it," and created all these things that we all take for granted now.
Yeah. So
amazing.
now I've skipped some stuff. I've actually gone back to Paris. I've
Yeah.
spent a week or two learning the crane.
Yeah.
I've already, I've already figured out some stuff
So
about it.
what were you physically doing? What, like with shots? Were you operating it?
No,
Were you?
I was not operating. That was the very first thing that Billy Fraker
So this guy isn't
ever
doing
made,
it,
because
or-
that was how I was billed. My plan, why I gave a shit about this
Yeah.
thing, was because I thought it was how I was finally going to get in the union as an operator
Okay.
or as a DP.
Gotcha.
And the very first thing that Fraker said, they said, well, and Andy will operate. And Fraker said, no, my operator's operating. Listen, I loved Billy, and
Yeah.
Billy said important things to me, and I will forever be grateful to
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
because he played gruff, and he was not gruff,
Yeah.
and he I know one of the questions you wanted to ask at some point was,
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with, how do you deal with making suggestions?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story about making suggestions. So here I am, and I'm cocky,
And just you're 26, 27?
5 something, yeah, whatever.
And is Fraker at that point a big established DP?
Oh my
He is.
God,
Okay, so
Fraker is
I did-
Fraker.
Yeah, I didn't know at
Yeah.
what point in his career he was. Okay,
Oh yeah,
and you're on a Steven Spielberg movie, so
and now I'm on a Steven Spielberg movie.
so
after
everybody's
Close
saying, what does
Encounters.
the 26-year-old kid have to say?
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So somewhere early on in the picture, I find myself standing because in a way that's inconceivable. If you are the Luma guy, the Luma technician, and I am, because
Yeah.
by this time they've thrown one of the French guys off entirely.
Okay.
They've just said he can't work on this thing because he doesn't speak English.
Oh,
And
I
they would,
gotcha.
and Jean-Marie, the one who did speak English, would stay on the ground, and Alain would run up a ladder because they wouldn't let us. They would set a shot with the crane, and they were so afraid we'd never find our way back to it. They'd make Alain go up to make an adjustment in the video
they
tape
didn't
or
want to
whatever.
bring it down and take it back out.
And so
boy.
the English-speaking guy is speaking in French to the guy on the top. They say, "No, this doesn't work. No. No French guy's up on the top of the ladder." So Alain's gone back to France, and now it's me and Jean-Marie.
Yeah.
And so this thing has become central to the movie because what's happened over the first 2 or 3 weeks is Spielberg has made a decision that by the time this movie is over, he is going to know everything a remote crane can do.
He's going to master it.
And
yeah.
so he's doing shots that are dumb on the crane,
Yeah.
and he's doing shots that are wise on the crane, but he is exploring its capabilities.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing
That's
to watch.
really
that.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because this thing is temperamental and you have to, there's discussion all the time about can it do this and I'm in everything. So I find myself in a circle with Fraker and Spielberg and Buzz Feitshans, the producer, and I don't know, maybe one or two more. And
But in a weird way, you're just as important as all of them because
I think so.
Yeah, sure. No, but because if this thing doesn't work and you're the guy who knows.
But perhaps they're not actually talking about the crane. Maybe they're actually discussing something else.
Could be.
And but Andy decides that he has something.
Okay. And how does that go?
Everybody listens,
Yeah.
but they certainly don't take my suggestion.
Okay.
And we move on.
Yeah.
And then, a little while later, Fraker comes over and says, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And I, "Sure, Billy, what do you want?" And he says, "Andy," says, "next year you can have opinions. This year you can just keep your mouth shut." And I have loved him forever for that because I actually heard him. And I didn't always listen to people in those days.
So it didn't send you the wrong way. You realized what he was talking about.
No, I knew he was trying to tell me something
Yeah.
that would save my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that was because he realized it or because something was said?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Well, no. I don't think anybody said. I think this fucking kid said something, and they went on with what they were doing.
But he noted it. So
By the way,
he
also,
obviously liked you, though, right?
he
Because
did like me, and Spielberg liked me.
Yeah.
And by the way, Spielberg wasn't much older than me, or is he even older than he? May not be.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't that kids were unwelcome.
Yeah.
And and I was bright, but I hadn't already made those movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, Billy, is the reason I think that I was, he gave me the opportunity to stay in the game long enough to learn how to be in Hollywood a little bit. And then I kind of figured some of the rest of it out myself over the next 30, 40 years.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
an incredible story. And was Spielberg doing stuff that is it the kind of thing where when he set something up, you saw it and went, "Oh, that would be cool," or did you hear it and go, I don't think it can do that. I don't know how we're going to do that," and then you'd be surprised or not, you know?
I don't remember ever. I never said no.
Yeah.
If I have some success in a business, it was because fairly early on I learned to say yes. And here's what I think it's going to cost you, whether it's time or money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can always say yes. You just have to know the consequences of saying yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't. All right, here's a Spielberg story.
Okay.
So we've moved out of MGM. We've moved over to Warner's because the picture's so big it can't fit into one studio.
Okay.
And we have that huge stage at Warner's, and Steven's built. No, the crew has built.
Well done.
Has built.
Yes.
But Steven has caused to be built.
Yes. Okay.
An enormous the Hollywood Boulevard set.
Yeah.
And it may be 300 feet long, but whatever it is, it's Hollywood Boulevard, block after block
That was
after
inside
block.
a stage?
That's inside a stage.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wait, but a couple stages together or something, right?
No, it's the biggest stage at Warner's.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And there are buildings with windows, and in the windows, I'm say the windows are like whatever, an inch and a half high, but there are people inside. There's a scene of people screwing in one of the windows.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not a still; it's a movie.
Yeah.
Because Greg Jean and his crew have put little 16 millimeter projectors inside.
And that's, I got to go watch it for so many reasons. That's amazing.
And
Wow.
this is all kind of before everybody having wireless headsets. So I built them.
Wow.
I built them because this was so large and we're trying to coordinate so many things. I got a bunch of telephone company operator headsets and wired them all together. But Spielberg says, I want to fly over Hollywood Boulevard. I want to just be able to, be an airplane and make a pass over Hollywood Boulevard.
Okay.
Why don't you guys figure out how to do that?
And go do that, and I'll be back.
So the grip department built this huge long cable run, and suspended from the cable run was a little piece of steel rigging and probably a platform deck
Yeah.
with a hole for a Mitchell mount.
Oh, wow.
And our contribution is we're going to take the head off of the Luma.
Yeah.
And for the first time, it's going to be mounted as a separate remote head.
Wow.
But of course, if that set is 300 feet long or 200 feet, whatever the hell it is, that means you have to have a 300-foot long cable.
Because it wasn't wireless.
There's no wireless.
There's no wireless. Yeah.
No.
Which, of course, there weren't 300-foot long cables, probably.
No. So we hand loomed. We made cables. Jean-Marie and I spent weekends on Golden Time, something I think is lost now.
No, yeah. We'll explain Golden Time at the end of the...
Yeah.
And weekend pay and all.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we built probably a 400 or 500 long cable rig.
That's amazing.
And then it has to be loomed into, just a lot of real old fashioned rigging.
Yeah.
And then, so they put there's a side story, but they put the steel cable, the flying cable rig in.
Yeah.
And they put the steel framework, and then the grip department calls me down. I forget the guy's name who ran it. Wonderful guy. And he says, "You want to take it for a ride?" I said, "Hell yeah, I want to take it for a ride." Yeah. So I sit down on the wooden part and I grab onto the steel.
So you take it for
Yeah.
Okay.
And they send me sailing
over Hollywood Boulevard.
All the way down Hollywood Boulevard. It is the most stunning ride. Look, I'm a guy about sensations. This is a sensation.
That's fantastic.
And at the end of it, he fails to hit the stop properly. and it comes smacking to a stop, and I fly up. I'm 10 or 15 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
I come flying up. My head hits the steel rail.
Oh, jeez.
Blood is dripping down, and I'm hanging, holding on to the two steel things that I'd been holding on to.
Yeah.
With blood streaming over my eyes. Get me out of here! And I forget to get a ladder, and they get me down.
That's
And
great.
I'm here, obviously. So safety first, kids. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, but these are the stupid things that we all used to do, which afterwards you're like, I don't know, it seemed like a good idea.
I would.
But you have a great memory of it, right?
I would pay again.
Yeah,
to do
Yeah.
that. I would probably say I ought to be roped in.
And I'll tell you the thing that I really like about it in a weird way is because it happened back then.
Uh-huh.
You don't have an iPhone shot of it.
Oh God.
In other words, you were fully immersed in the experience as
Oh,
opposed to like
God.
recording it so you could have it later or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
And the fact that the last sort of 20 feet when you start realizing, shit, he's not going to be able to stop. Oh no!
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh my gosh. The amazing thing is I've talked to so many people, talked to John Toll and Nick McLean Sr. and people from like back in the day is what I sort of call it, is like how Wild West it was, you know? And it wasn't, I mean, again, are you still a non-union? You're still non-union at that point, right?
Oh, at that point, yes.
At that point, you're a non-union. I don't even know what you are. You're not an operator. You're not a camera assistant.
They don't know. They don't know what it is either. and
You're
it caused-
just a guy.
Right.
And yet you're in the middle of these massive things, holding on to this thing, going through Warner Brothers' largest, with one of the biggest directors of all time. But, it's just stuff happened, right?
Stuff happens.
That's great. How great.
Yeah.
But how great. I mean, there's something, the thing that I love about that is like, that's what makes people visionaries is they don't think, oh, I don't know how to do this. That's someone else's job. I just know what I want to do. I just want the camera to fly through here.
Yeah.
And I mean, he probably didn't say, take that off of there and put it on here or whatever. He said, I'm going to go up to my office and you guys tell me how to do this.
He
or
probably
whatever.
came to us
Yeah.
and said, could you take the head off that thing?
Yeah, or maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys had never taken the head off?
Never.
Had never thought of it?
We had to make the device to put the Mitchell mount on
Wow.
because it didn't exist.
That's
The
amazing.
Luma, the head went right up into the structure
It was
of the
all
crane.
one
Yeah.
piece or
Because
another.
everything they did was towards
was that.
achieving a reduction in weight.
It's incredible.
So you didn't have anything that wasn't necessary.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
So and then this then got you access to a lot of other films that normally you would have never had been involved in.
Right from there, I went to Wolfen.
So you were basically the guy.
I was the guy.
Yeah, and there was still only one Luma at this
There was
point.
one Luma. They were building 6 more. I was the guy.
Wow.
And maybe by this time, they were already halfway, whatever, because 1941 takes months and months and months to shoot.
Yeah.
And there's 2 weeks, the production really wants to get rid of this thing.
Oh, you were only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, you're saying?
Yeah.
And he, of course, said, no, I want this every day.
And they took it away.
Wow.
And then he made them bring it back. And because they wouldn't commit, if I remember correctly, they didn't commit to it.
Yeah.
And so then the French booked it, and then it had to go back to France and do some other job. But he said, "You get that goddamn thing back
That's
here.
mine. That's my crane.
That's mine."
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And when you're that new with that technology, are you every day going, oh, we can do this better, or this widget, or we need this? Or are you constantly?
We invent, for better or for worse, we invent Video Village.
True.
It is. First of all, nobody is using video taps on Hollywood
It
production.
just doesn't exist.
Video taps exist for commercials where, where frightened people have. We're filmmakers.
Yes.
We don't look through
Oh, but
monitors.
so it did for commercials. There was something.
The video taps existed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
But nobody used it.
But so it was known, but it was a point of pride.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Nobody who was making movies.
Yeah. We're
was
serious.
looking,
We're
was
serious
looking through a
auteurs. We don't
video
need to-
camera.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
We know what we're doing here,
Okay.
and the dailies will prove it.
Boy, that's changed a little bit.
Yes. So So Spielberg invents that because he says to the grips, because what happens, of course, is the first time we set up our monitors, we set up our
Yeah.
wheels, we set up our remote, focus and all the rest of
They're
that.
looking over your shoulder, right?
And so here's Spielberg, and here's Fraker, and here's Dick Colleen. Oh my God, Dick Colleen. You don't know who he is.
No, was the operator?
He's
or was
the camera operator.
Oh, Dick Colleen. No. I was
Oh.
going to ask you next about the camera operator.
Oh, ask older guys about Dick Colleen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when I say older guys, who the hell's older than me?
Well, there's two people.
But ask Nick, ask Nikki or somebody like
absolutely.
that.
But I was going to ask you about that. So what was his take on this? Because I mean, he's basically the first remote camera operator.
Yes, he is.
I mean, other than these couple of shots in France, right?
Yeah.
But by the end of this, he's had more experience on this than anyone ever.
Totally, absolutely. And that leads to another question that you asked about, what do you do when the director and the DP don't agree?
Not that the director and the DP ever disagree, of course, but if it were to happen.
Oh, if it somehow they could have separate visions.
They could have separate visions.
Perhaps because the director hadn't perfectly communicated to the DP what his precise vision
which
was.
Of course he's never going to admit.
Momentary misunderstanding
yes, of course.
that will soon be straightened out.
And so how does one deal with that?
Well, so if you're Dick Colleen,
yeah.
Spielberg sits on his left. Fraker sits on his right.
It's like the good angel, the bad angel.
I swear to you. And Stephen reaches over and he takes the wheel and he turns it a little. He says, Dickie, like this.
For an opening frame or
yeah,
something.
For an opening,
okay,
exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe more like this.
Yeah.
And when Stephen turns away to talk to somebody else, Billy reaches over. No.
It puts it back where it was. Oh, geez. That's great. That's great. And mind you, by the way, I think just to put it, well, I'm thinking of this now as it's not abnormal for me to think that a DP would come over and go, just do this, do that, or whatever. But before that, they were on the camera and they weren't looking at it. The only person was the operator. So for an operator, that must have been unbelievable because it's like, wait, what? Why are you touching this? This is my world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and Dick was a very experienced conventional camera operator.
Yeah.
This idea that suddenly everybody is seeing every frame.
Well, everybody was a conventional camera operator because there wasn't anything else.
Well,
right?
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Spielberg immediately realizes that right behind our little line of scrimmage, there's another line of scrimmage forming. Because, the grips want to look. And
people are on apple boxes to try to see what's going on.
Yeah. So he says to the grips,
Yeah.
And so Gary Dodd was the key on that. And Gary takes a bunch of blacks
and solids it out.
And solids the whole three sides around.
Because Spielberg doesn't want people looking over his shoulder.
Spielberg doesn't want anybody looking over his shoulder.
All right.
And it becomes, here's the rules. Fraker comes in.
Yeah.
Spielberg comes in. The script clerk comes in. Dickie comes in, of course. Ronnie Vargas was the first assistant.
Okay.
He comes in, and me. Period. And producer can come in, of course. But
wait, so what was Ronnie Vargas doing? Did he have a remote follow focus?
Yes, of course.
But not wireless, I'm assuming.
Not wireless.
Wired.
No, everything is wired.
Was that also a totally new thing, or did that exist before this?
So when I say he comes in, he's not there during the shot.
Yeah.
But he can come in.
During the shot, he's watching the camera.
So what's going on is two things. One of them is the Luma guys have figured out something. The first thing is they know that one of the things I watch is another video camera. There's two video cameras mounted on these cameras in those days.
Oh.
One of them is looking through the lens, and the second one is pointed at the lens barrel. Because remote focuses are very, very, they can jump teeth, they can fail to move, they can do 100 things.
So he can see that it's on 4 feet or that
so
it's on what it actually is.
He comes in, and then later on, he gets his own monitor out on set with those two pictures.
Yes.
So he can rack it, say, right, when I turn the knob to here, it really is hitting 10 feet or 12 feet or whatever. Yeah. But nobody trusts. What you have to know is nobody trusts anything this crane does.
Yeah.
Because
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah. And we all live by being sure that, within reason, that what we're doing is really going to work.
And the video tap was probably such that you couldn't tell focus off the video
Oh,
tap.
God,
so he had to be on
no.
top. But so he had a wired remote control.
He has a wired focus.
And was that proprietary to this whole Luma thing, or was that from something else?
I think we're using the Panavision one at that point.
Oh, they had something.
Yeah,
Okay,
Panavision
gotcha.
had a little two-knob control.
Yeah, okay.
And I think we had our own as well. So what he's doing is, triangulating,
Yeah,
right? Standing off to the side
yeah.
and, making measurement, running out of tape before the shot, tape here, tape here,
Yeah,
tape here. And then finding his place
Sure.
so that he can really see, all right, when the head of the crane is just
Yep.
touching that edge of the set, that's got to be 9 foot 4 inches or
And
whatever.
so he was really, I mean, he
Flying blind.
but he was really the first assistant to ever be off of the dolly.
Yeah.
In essence, I mean, there was
first
Steadicam before then.
First American.
First American, yeah.
Yeah.
But the first person with that much experience anyway, by the time it was done. I guess there was Steadicam before then, but Steadicam, at least you could stand next to the camera on some level. You could still be where you normally would be.
Yeah, no, he was the first guy who's 20, 30 feet away sometimes.
I never even thought about it. That must have just been like a complete new...
These guys.
That's amazing.
And I didn't understand how brave they were being.
Yeah.
Because...
And they didn't go into this movie thinking this was going to be this way because it sort of became this.
No. This was a last minute, kind of, here's a surprise.
Was there resentment against you for how hard it made their jobs?
Not those guys.
They embraced
Those
it.
guys were
That's
so
the best.
cool.
That's the best.
Yeah.
But that's another part. I mean, for operators who are coming up, for me, when I was coming up still, it's sort of like there is this thing about going, I have no idea how this is going to work, but we're just going to like lean into it and figure it out. And somehow, and 9 times out of 10, even now, there's still shots that I get thrown where I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
and then you just sort of, and sometimes you have to pull back and go, we can't do that part because of the physics, but we'll do this or whatever. But you punt. That's amazing. So you went on to do Wolfen.
Went on to do Wolfen. And that was where I met Garrett.
Yeah.
And Garrett and I shared a truck.
Garrett Brown, the Steadicam operator.
Garrett Brown, the Steadicam operator.
So the two weirdo camera things, which because Steadicam was,
let's put them together.
Yeah, Steadicam was like three movies in or something like that or whatever. Yeah.
And Garrett is Garrett.
Yeah.
So you fall in love immediately.
Absolutely.
And so we. The way we kind of worked was we traded off shots very often.
Okay.
Where Garrett would run along the ground or whatever. And then if there was something high, so like the wolf jumps over a fence,
you'd take
Garrett runs up and then they, cut to a shot of us and we carry it up and over and stuff like that.
Wow.
And we do all those tracking shots in the burned out church.
Uh-huh.
All of that kind of stuff.
At this point, did you sort of feel like you're beginning to know what you're doing? You've done it long enough, or are you still figuring this out?
I'm really thoughtless. I really am. Dave, how I got through this was...
That's open. That's honest.
It's the truth.
So you're just along for the ride, basically.
I was smart and fast.
Yeah, okay.
And fucking thoughtless.
Yeah, okay.
And
not
every
a bad
day
thing always. It worked for you.
It kind of worked.
Yeah.
I can tell you about the mistakes. I'll keep on doing that, you know. But for the most part, I could show up and say, oh, shit, I don't know. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, it's like you're dumb enough not to know that you shouldn't be doing whatever you're doing, like grabbing onto the thing in 1941.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
But I have to imagine that between what you were doing and who Garrett is, and you being on the same truck together, there was probably a lot of him looking at it going, well, why don't you just do this? Or this thing would, because he's such a tinkerer.
Yeah, me too, though.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. And were you looking at the Steadicam going, well, why doesn't it? I mean, I would just think that there was a lot of back and forth there. No?
So I'm hanging out at that point. First of all, I'm getting per diem in cash, and I'm staying at the Chelsea Hotel, and I'm hanging out with some of the druggiest people in New York. Kind of fabled druggers.
Wait, Chelsea Hotel in what, 79?
Yeah.
So we're talking like rock and rollers and people that we've all heard of.
You
now,
know who I'm hanging out with.
Some people who didn't make it out of there, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So No, I don't remember a single. I'm sure we had technical conversations.
That was not the highlight of the show for you. Okay. All right. Fine.
No, I mean, Garrett put the Steadicam on me.
Yeah.
I was a big guy, you
Yeah.
know, and so I probably fit the vest,
Yeah.
you know. And he put the Steadicam. He said, "You could do this. You know, you could do this." And he shows me, you know, the this and the this.
Yeah.
And I just like, no, no, I can sit behind a console.
That's exactly.
You know, yeah, I got to build a 2,500-pound thing every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but then I get to sit. I mean, it got cold in New York.
Yeah.
And I said, "All right, we're gonna operate the Luma from the back of this truck. Can we get some
With the
heaters
heat
in
on.
here?"
Yep. Yep.
You know,
Yep.
no, man.
Meanwhile, Garrett's running out there in the snow, and yeah, no, I hear you. That's not an unintelligent
not
decision.
stupid.
Yeah. That was thoughtful, is what it was.
Yeah.
That's great.
But
yeah.
so, just to finish, so no, my fondest memory of Garrett on that show is the two of us would ride the crew van out to the Bronx,
Yeah.
and we'd be singing Waltzing Matilda together at 7 in the morning or something like that.
Why waltzing Matilda?
I don't know. It was him. He called the song, you know.
That's a classic. I don't know. That's either classically Garrett or classically not Garrett, but it's a brilliant story and it's a brilliant image. Maybe the next time I get you guys together, we'll have to have you do that, reprise that.
If he even remembers.
That's pretty funny. So basically, you just went on to work on movie after movie. You were the guy for quite some time. And when did more Luma cranes come into existence where there were others? Like
pretty quick. They built a series of 6.
Okay.
And one went to New York, and so I trained the first Luma technician, Stuart Allen.
Okay.
Who, for anybody who was around, Stuart until 6-7 years ago was the remote crane operator or technician in New York.
Wow.
And I trained the whole first generation.
That's amazing.
Of Americans. In Hollywood, David Hennings, cinematographer, was a Luma technician.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Until I fired him. No, I mean I fired him because he had gotten so over it. Yeah. I knew he wanted a DP.
He needed to move on. So
he had to move on.
Yeah.
And I forget what he did, but he did something, and I had to go and fill in. And I said, I came back, I saw the shape the crane was in. I said, David,
this is it.
David, my friend, you know what? I think you're ready to do something new.
And how quickly did knockoffs start to show up, since it wasn't?
So a guy named Bob Netman had invented a thing called the, I don't remember, some other head. And that pretty quickly found a home on one of the few the first lighter weight cranes. A company called Agritment was making a lattice crane. You know, now they're very common. Yeah. That kind of crane that's a steel lattice work. Yeah. And, so they're still heavy. They're still quite a bit heavier than, but they're not anywhere near as heavy as a Chapman.
Sure.
So people started to pair those two up.
Okay.
And then, other things came along. What nobody ever did again until the Technocrane was to make a purpose-built, it only works with remote heads crane. And by doing that, you can do a number of things about making it light and still stiff, and tiny profiles.
Because it doesn't have to do double duty of anything else.
Yeah. And the minute you make a crane that carries a person, there's a whole set of constraints that come into it.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so then eventually you went on, I don't want to gloss over, but you went on to create Panavision remote systems from this. And
that's a whole long story. I go to work for Panavision. So Film Trucks loses the cranes. They go to Panavision because Samuelson's is Panavision's agent, and it's the logical.
So they buy the rights to it or whatever it is.
And then Jack Holzman says, Andy, please come here and run the Luma for Panavision. And I do that, but then he very quickly says, no, go up and run the Panavision division that makes the video cameras that nobody ever knows about, the Panacams. Yeah. Speaking of buried technology.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And once again, I'm in a position where Jack Holzman was nuts to give me that responsibility. Yeah. I really, I did it. I'm not saying I was unable to do it.
Yeah.
But in those days, other people had a much better idea of me than I did.
Gotcha.
I really was a drug addict and a fuck up. you know, but people saw that I could be something else, and they gave me chances over and over again.
So let me ask you a question about that, because what I found in my career is as you go over plateaus, like one of the things that defined me was I got hired on ER as an A-camera Steadicam operator. I was 26 years old. I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in a number of places you stumbled into things not knowing what you're doing, and you, I'm sure you didn't excel at every single one of them, but you excelled and you prospered. So what do you think what is that thing? What is that?
I was so lucky.
Yeah.
I was so lucky.
So you think
First
it's
of
just
all,
luck?
I mean, I had gone way off the tracks as a kid. I'd gotten myself in a whole lot of trouble,
Mm-hmm.
but I was pretty bright. And for years, I wouldn't admit that. I really would not,
Mm-hmm.
how could I possibly be right? I was just this fuck up getting arrested and, stuff like that. And then people have said I have led a charmed life, and in many respects I have. But maybe the most fortunate thing was that when I could smell somehow the right way, I mean, I went down a lot of bad, wrong alleys, 100 wrong turns.
Everybody does.
But they didn't crush me.
Yeah.
And then something would open. What is amazing about being young is the opportunities that open in front of you. When you've reached middle age, it gets harder and harder because, first of all, because you already know too many things, and knowing things is the death of learning things.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, I really believe that. I'm not saying not wisdom. Wisdom comes, over time.
Knowledge.
Right. But when we're young and you're just bouncing off, if you're looking, you see or feel opportunities because you haven't already experienced all of those things. And I stayed young longer than a lot of other people.
Well, that's valid. So I want to bring it back to a little discussion about operating, because it's some of what we're talking. Although you have such a fascinating story. You mentioned that what was the operator on 1941?
Dick Colleen.
That he was a great operator.
He was a great operator.
What makes someone a great operator? And I'm not talking about panning and tilting.
No, of course not.
You know what I mean? What is it?
Panning and tilting gets you on the set.
Well, you got to assume you have to assume you know how to do that, because that's like driving a car. You got to know how to put it in drive. It doesn't make you a good driver.
And then, so panning and tilting gets you on the set, and then making good frames gets you, further. It probably keeps you on the set, but then making friends and connections is what gives you a career. If you can make friends and connections, if you can cherish everybody around you, they'll love you back, most of them, and they'll take you along.
So it's about that's how you get hired back, is you get remembered, you get...
In this business, if you don't get hired back, it's a finite universe.
Yeah. That catches up with you.
Yeah.
One of the things that we haven't talked about, I haven't even mentioned, is that you are an incredible photographer. I think you're an incredible photographer.
Thank
You're
you.
probably going to say you're not.
I'm quite good.
Yeah, you are.
I am not incredible. I'm serious. I know who the incredible ones are.
It's overrated. I think I look around at we're in your living room right now, and I look around at the things on the walls, and I think they're fantastic.
Thank you.
But you obviously understand composition, framing, storytelling. Can you just talk about that a little bit? It's such an esoteric thing. I always try to, it's funny, like for film specifically. I mean, I'm sure for photography as well. There's the rule of thirds, and there's all these different rules, right? And my thing is always, you absolutely need to know them, and then you need to forget them, because you just make good frames. But it's a good starting place. But can you just talk about that a little bit?
So for a long time, I really wanted to reduce everything to a single plane.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm not even sure I can explain that to you.
Okay. You mean visually and
Visually,
photographically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, photographically.
Yeah.
I think a great deal of photography is finding foreground, middle ground, background,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't, the rule of thirds, I know it. I don't pay attention to it because when I'm making a frame, what I want to do is to balance the masses. And sometimes the masses are based in color, and sometimes the masses are based in light.
Hmm.
But in some way or another, or they have to do with an action, or but in some way or another, what I want is to make balanced frames. On the days I don't want to make a balanced frame, then I know how to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But my first desire as a photographer, as a still photographer, is to make a balanced frame in which one thing is dominant.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm looking for. I mean, so one of my great pieces of luck was I came up at a time when we all were trying to get into the viewfinder, and the viewfinder is one eye. And I think seeing with two eyes is immeasurably more powerful than seeing with a single eye. I think the single eye takes you into the scene in a way that can fool you. And so, and I do this all the time as a still photographer. As of course I shoot, with my left eye. I'm left eye dominant, but I immediately check my frames on the back with both eyes because I know my left eye will lead me astray. Will let the emotions of that side, I'm making up what it is now, affect what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So I very much prefer this idea of sitting back 2 feet and looking at a monitor. And so when I came to the Luma, that was wonderful. For the first time, I was like, oh my God, that's cool. Look at that. Oh no, a little tiny. Okay, let's do this. Let's do that. No, we'd be better off 2 feet up. Can we just go up 2 feet, guys? Just up, right there, that.
Huh.
Yeah.
And when you were saying balancing the masses, is it something that when you're framing something up, you're actually cognizantly thinking about, or are you just thinking about I like how this looks?
Oh, I want my emotions to play a part.
Yeah.
If this is intellectual, it's just an intellectual picture.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you now, I don't know how much this matters to a camera operator.
My guess is it will. Go ahead with
well,
it.
well, only because this is when it's me as a still photographer, and I don't have to listen to anybody else. I'm not
You're
making
the boss.
I'm not making someone else's picture.
Yeah.
I'm making my picture.
Sure.
I didn't learn this until after I was finished shooting, and I was a still photographer working for me. So
you're saying after you got out of the film industry, and you were just
I'm long gone from production for the most part. But as I really started to build a career as a still operator, as I really began to build a career as a still photographer, I realized that some of the things that I had learned in the movie business didn't serve me well. And what they were was probably too large a concern on making the day. Now, this may not be good for your career, so be careful with what I'm saying here. We rush all the time. And that leads to people who can make quick decisions, whether they're good or not.
Yeah.
Or maybe not so much good or not. You got to make good decisions to stay in the game. But are they the best decisions? And the people who are lucky enough either to insist on getting the moment they need or get enough budget to get all the moments that they need tend to make, to my mind, more perfectly realized pictures very often. So how I come to that is I started shooting stills, and I would go into places and I was like, oh yeah, there. No, man, Not there. You haven't even been here yet. You haven't experienced this place at all. So the first thing I started to do, it came to me, was to not know what I was shooting, not make the quick decision about the best way. And so I started to force myself to walk all the way around and look at everything from all the angles before I picked up the camera. The most important thing I started to do was not pick up the camera, but to use my eyes. And I would walk around and I would look, and I would look from every angle, and then I would move in. I'd say, okay, that's from back here. Now what happens when I move in here? Because you know this. You know very well we're in a three-dimensional world. And 15 feet away, puts you outside. And 10 feet away puts you on the verge. And 3 feet away puts you inside. And every one of those is so completely different. And so if I did that, then I had some sense of what was there. And as a camera operator, I understand you're living with what a director's vision is already, and then what a DP's vision is already. But if you have done that circuit on your own, I think you're more prepared to venture a thought about, okay, I understand you want to do this. Can I take you to a place? Would it be okay to be here to see that? And maybe if your DP is not, filled with, I'm the DP, they might listen.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
It's interesting that you say that. That's fascinating because I tend to, if I'm in rehearsals and if it's the type of situation where nobody's going to be bothered by this, I will actually usually walk in a circle around what's going on.
Yeah.
Mainly because I've already gone, okay, I'm hoping that this is what we're going to do. We're going to play it over here and this and this and this. But just in case there's something I've totally missed from some other thing where I go, you know what, this makes perfect sense that we're going to do over here, but just take a look at this and see.
What about this alternate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times where I've seen that, specifically with a couple of directors where I've shown them, and I would say, the whole thing plays from over here. Like you could play it in one. And they've looked at it like, the type of directors who are open to and want to simplify and whatever. And they go, oh my gosh, this is so much better.
And that's why you're great fortune. But the thing you have to strive for is to work with people who are open.
There's no question. I mean, that's a whole, and that you can't control, but that is what it is.
Yeah.
So, we sort of touched on it, but pitching ideas.
Right.
Don't do them the way that you did it, apparently. But after a year, what did you think? Do you have any thoughts for, because, one of the things, I've been doing this for 30 some years. And so people go, well, how do you pitch ideas? And it's like, well, I can tell you how I pitch ideas, but I don't pitch ideas this way I did when I was 5 years.
No, because now you're Dave Chamides.
And also I don't care as much.
Well, but you come with respect built in. You don't walk on the set and say, who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah. Well, actually, you'd be surprised. But no, that's just when I come home, actually.
Well, that's true for all of us.
You're back again?
I remember you, and I don't think I liked you.
And by the way, the dog needs to go out. So, but how do you have any thoughts for younger operators and pitching ideas that aren't?
Yeah. The first thing, okay, I didn't learn this operating. I learned this as an executive at Panavision.
Oh.
Because I would go to, by the way, if you ever want to know what boring is, go to big meetings. Get yourself in some place in a large organization that has existed for a while and that brings together 15 or 20 people from different departments to discuss something and spend the longest hours of your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
for me
fun.
anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, but one of the things that I learned doing that was how much other people know. It was the time that I finally slowed down enough to listen to what everybody else said first. And I began to see that very often oh shit, the thing that we have to talk about is this. Somebody else had already thought of that. And they got to say it. And I didn't need to be that guy anymore. And so, I would wait and try to see not what I already knew, but what hadn't been discussed. You know, what was the thing I could bring to it that nobody else already had in their mind? And that's when I think you become valuable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how does that relate, though, to pitching an idea?
Well, the first thing you have to know is what ideas are circulating.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I'm assuming you are in a situation where the operator is part of the conversation, or
Yeah.
at least standing on the edge of the conversation between the director and the DP. And then maybe you've had a further conversation with the DP. And then maybe you've taken a walk around the room. And then maybe you think of something that isn't nice, but really better.
Mm-hmm.
Not just alternate, but, you know, something that would really raise the level up a little bit. And if you can answer that honestly, if you can say to yourself, yeah, I got a great idea, but you know what? You know, it's just another idea.
Yeah.
Because very often, you know, our little brains, we love to be important, or we love to, you know, to make a contribution, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But, you know, is it really just A or B, or is it B is so much better?
Yeah.
So my thought is, frankly, don't start necessarily with ideas. You don't need them right away. What you need right away is to do a great job on the shot they wanted.
That's actually excellent advice. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, and that took me 50 years.
Yeah.
You know?
No, but and then once you've been nailing everything, then it's sort
Then
of
they-
like, oh, you have something to add on top of
He's
that.
so good.
Yeah.
You know, oh
Maybe
man,
we should
he's
listen.
just, never needs another take. Always this,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, you have something you want to say? Sure.
Yeah.
You know, but if you jump in the first day, no, they didn't come here to listen to you.
Yeah. I'll share a quick story with you. I was on second year of VR. They did this thing where they had me come out on the Emmys with Tony Edwards, and we did this little dance, and then they showed this movie. And I'm 27 years old. I've been doing ER for 2 years now, so I'm basically the greatest camera operator in the history of camera, if you ask me. Anyway,
Since I quit.
there's nothing. Yes, exactly. There's nothing better. I know everything. And on ER, the reality is the DP would come and turn the lights on, and it was me and the director. So I was used to saying everything. And so I'm on headsets, and there are 9 million people talking, and they tell us what we're doing, and Tony and I come out and do it, and I hear over the headsets yeah, you know, that's great. And I look up, and of course all the lights are coming, but I assume that the director is somewhere up there. And I said, excuse me, can you guys hear me on this thing? Because I'm not quite sure how anything works. And everything kind of goes quiet. And this voice goes, yeah. And I was like, is the director, can you hear me? Yeah, this is, I don't remember his name. What's up? And I said, well, it just seems to me that if Tony came out this way and I came out that way and I circled around him, it would work better. And I don't know if you want to see that or whatever. And then I becomes very aware that everything has gone quiet. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's weird. Everybody else has stopped talking. What's going on? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, if it's cool, I can show you. It's pretty quick. And he goes, yeah. And so, of course, I do what I do on air. Hey, Tony, come on over here. And when I come this way, you start pivoting that way, and we'll wrap around each other. So we do it, and Tony does it, and I finish. And so I look up, and the lights are, I'm squinting, the lights are streaming. And I said, so, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like it works better, but, whatever you want. And I'm probably said it, in some obnoxious way. And there's a pause, and he goes, yeah, doesn't change much. Let's do that. Okay. So scene, shot 20. And I'm thinking to myself, okay. And then I remember Tony comes up to me, and he goes, Dave? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I don't think everything works the way that ER works. And I said, did I just screw up? And he said, no, I think you're okay, but I think you came kind of close. Okay, fine. But it's, that's like you said, it's being young and being stupid and not knowing better. Now I'd probably know to maybe I'd say something, but a totally different way or whatever. But back then it was just like, well, I don't know. Doesn't everybody want to do something better?
Yeah.
And the answer sometimes is no.
No.
They want to do it their way.
Yeah.
So, it goes that way. Your pictures, when you're taking photographs, are you thinking about, for lack of a better word, the story that frame is telling?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, absolutely. We are here sitting in my living room, and pride of place, the first thing you see when you walk in the house is a picture of mine.
Yeah.
That I wrote a story about. And it is a picture of the last standing Pony Express station in America. And it's in a little tiny, not even in a town, but but in a prairie outside of a town in Kansas. I forget the name of it. And I was taken there by a Kansas farmer who said, "You can't leave here before you've seen this place," and drove
cool.
us 20 or 30 miles to
Yeah.
go and see this place. And I was so taken by it, by the history that it represented and by the fact that it's in a tiny little park that retains the feel of what Kansas was in the 18 whatever that is, say 60s or 70s or
Okay.
something like that. And so, as is my my custom, I walked around. This is not the view that you see. The view you see is on the other side.
That's like the visitor part of it or something
The
like
front
that.
of it is, yeah, the
Yeah,
entrance is
okay.
all there. But I came here and I'm downhill a little bit, and and this image started to come together.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I had to make a picture that once you knew that this was a Pony Express station, because those sometimes words are necessary,
Yeah.
you would get the sense that it was an existing one, that you were in the place, that it was not just some old building.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just moved and I moved and I moved a little, foot here, foot there, whatever. And I think I probably got down on my knees to shoot that one. And it's funny. It's like it doesn't move. That building just stays there. It's there
Yeah.
all the time. But sometimes you have to be in exactly the right place
Uh-huh.
for it all to fall together. So this is a picture that on the surface is not perfectly balanced. It's open on the left, but there's a tree on the right, and 100 other things. I'm sorry you can't see it, but all of them together. When I said to you earlier about balancing the masses,
Yeah.
all of the masses are balanced
It works.
through a combination of color and structure,
Yep.
and and what I was looking for there was the emotion or the story, because the emotion comes from the story that we read into it.
Yep.
And so that's that. That's
Well, the thing that's great is it's a beautiful photograph, and with your permission, hopefully, maybe I'll put it up on the blog or something like
oh,
that.
sure.
But and then when you hear what it is, it becomes this unbelievably cool. Like, there's a whole nother level to it.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing I think with operating is it's all about the story, right? I mean, people talk about perfect frames, and there's no such thing. It's
Why
because
do we make movies?
to tell stories
To tell stories. Yeah, this is
and
not
to impress women.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, yes.
I mean, that's the least why I got into it. Let's be honest.
To impress women and to eat.
Yes, and to eat.
And because we can't do anything else. Because after your third year in, this is a stupid business.
Yeah.
And you would be better off if you got the hell out of it.
Yeah.
But if you're still staying, you have been captured by the circus.
Yeah.
And now you got to figure out how to make a life out of it.
Yeah, but it does, at the end of the day, that's to me what it all does come down to storytelling.
Yeah.
And there are many times as a Steadicam operator where I'll be, doing some shot that's been pitched, and it'll suddenly occur to me, and I go, this isn't about the story anymore. This is about the shot.
Yeah.
And then it's either trying to convince someone of that or trying to back out of it or whatever.
Or pray that they cut.
Or pray that they cut. Exactly. It's exactly right.
I mean, how many shots have you ever done where you said, why the this is at least two with something in the middle.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
We could keep on going, so let's keep on going.
Yeah, and then we get into the whole discussion of digital versus film, which I won't even begin to.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this was fantastic. Let me ask you one final question. What are you passionate about these days? You can go anywhere you want with that. How old are you now?
81.
81.
81.
And you just published your first book.
Just published my first book, and I'm starting to think about a second one.
Okay. All right. And actually, I'm going to give you a second to think about that, but your stuff can be found on Medium. Is it Medium?
Right. So I write. How I came to write the book is I started writing short stories about all the fun and crazy things
Some
that
of the
had
stuff
happened.
we've talked about.
Yes. Yeah. And so the first year or two, it was a lot of stories about drugs and crazy and getting in jail, whatever, things like that. And then slowly I began to write about things that happened later. Oh, actually, I did straighten out. Oh, actually, I became an executive. I got some patents. I did this. I did that. But the first 40 years were pretty nuts.
Yep.
And so I started to write these short stories. And
Which
then,
are great.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then as I turned about 79, I started thinking, you know what? I've kind of written a book here, or I've written chunks of a book, but there's too many things that don't fit together.
Yeah.
So I got an editor and I wrote a bunch of new stuff and, eventually made that book. And then someday, if you guys want, we'll talk about the craziness of the publishing world. But I ended up self-publishing.
Yep.
And I published on a place called BookBaby, BookBaby.com.
Yep.
And my story is called Stories I've Been Meaning to Tell You. It's available as an ebook and as a paperback, of course.
And just because I want people to go read this, what I want you to tell them is, what was your nickname?
Which one?
The nickname while you were on the hog farm.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ken Kesey or somebody there named me Captain Gas. And that was not because, as my daughter thought when she was growing up, that I farted a lot, but because I fell in love with nitrous oxide. I already had done lots of psychedelics and cocaine and all
So
the
I
rest
want
of
you
it.
to stop there, because I want, just based on that, everybody to go read the book, because it's fantastic. That's what you should stop with, and everybody's going to go, wait, what? There's more?
I always say to people, all right, here's the book. Look, if you're only going to read one chapter to decide whether to go further, start with the one that says my first stolen car.
Yes, which is an excellent one. I just wish that the book had come out back when I knew you at Remote Systems, because I could have called up and said, hey, can I please speak to Captain Gas?
People did.
I'm sure they
People
did, but I
who
wanted
remembered
to.
me from those days.
That's fantastic. So yes, you should definitely check out his book. But now, I mean, you've been talking, so maybe you haven't had a minute to think about it. What are you passionate about these days?
Life. It's just clear to me now, that we have such a short time here. We have so much opportunity to try at least to be happy. And you try to find the things that make you happy. If you can find a good marriage, if you can find a career you care about, if you can find people who you can really feel, have your back and you have theirs, and, you can do hard things together.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.